We are God's people. And as God's people, part of God's training for us involves that we go through pain. I have been through a smidge of it. It's rough. And at the end of it, I remember telling my sister, I don't know that I can recommend this thing for anybody. But I know that if you're going to walk with God, you're going to have to go through something.
And I remember I was in tears, like I was crying. Frankly, what hurt me more than everything else was my breaking marriage. That's what hurt me more than everything else. And I remember being in tears. And I remember saying to God in prayer, Lord, I understand if I was not working at all. But can I at least get paid for the work that I am doing? And he answered and said, I told you it was going to happen. And as he said that, I remembered that 5 years previously, 5.5 years at this point, he had told me that whether you make a great gain or a great loss, everything is a blessing. Wow. I'm telling you, a peace came over me when I realized what I was going through was something that not only had God warned me was coming, but it was actually something that he had assured me that I was going to be going through. Kind of like he had orchestrated it. When my dad was going through something similar in the 90s. And I remember the way my dad went through it on his knees by prayers, when the family was attacked, when we could barely eat, when we saw a version of poverty. That's my dad's story. But I remember that from watching the way he went through it, I was able to draw strength that if my dad could have gone through this in his 40s and come out better, the man he became later on, and even bigger and better afterwards, then whatever God has in store for me, by letting me go through what I'm going through right now, it has got to be big. So I took strength from that and I turned to God and I said, Lord, I trust you. Then Holy Spirit gave me this song. I don't know the English version. I'm sure there is one. And I'm sure I've heard it before, I just don't know it. But the Yoruba version is, most of us know it who are Yoruba. Ọ̀rẹ́ bí Jésù kò sí láyé yìí, òun nìkan lọ̀rẹ́ òtítọ́. Ọ̀rẹ́ ayé yìí yóò fi wá sílẹ̀, ṣùgbọ́n Jésù kò jẹ́ gbàgbé mi. Kò jẹ́ gbàgbé mi, ọ̀rẹ́ òtítọ́ ni. Kò jẹ́ gbàgbé mi, hallelujah. Ṣùgbọ́n Jésù kò jẹ́ gbàgbé mi. Words mean there is no friend like Jesus. He is the only true friend. Friends of this world, worldly friends, will leave us at some point, will abandon us. But Jesus will never forget us. No, he will never forget me. But Jesus will never forget us. Forget me. I remember singing that song and tears falling from my eyes. Now, God has brought me a long way. 2015 till now is just under 10 years. God has turned my life around. I've seen many breakthroughs. God has been good. God has been good. God has been good. But why am I telling this story? Two things. A, what I went through I went through because God wanted me to go through it. Which is what I mean when I say some sufferings come from God. I compare it to Job. And I drew strength from Job's story too. I remember Job. Oh my goodness, help me. I remember Job when he was losing everything. His children died, his business lost, his animals, his oxen, his camels, his cattle, everything dead same day. And he ripped his clothes and said, the Lord hath given, the Lord giveth, the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And the Bible records that in all these things, Job did not entreat God wrongly. Or how does it say it? Naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return hither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all this, Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. I made that my watchword, and I purposed in my heart that I will continue to worship God. There's a backstory that led me to this point, to be honest, which comes from about 10 years even before this point, but I'm not going to drag it through all that unless the Lord leads me there. I also remember, now this is the other part of the story, I remember that there was a young man who came to Ilorin through me. Let me put it that way. I'm going to be as vague as possible because I don't want to draw any attention to him, but I need to tell this story. There was a young man who came to Ilorin through me, whom I helped to settle in Ilorin by connecting him with the people that I had been working with. And they did their best to help him because they valued their relationship with me. They did their best to help him settle in. And this man was now settled in, and he was doing okay. And certain job opportunities started to open to him. Listen, this guy did well. He did gangbusters. But two curious things. At one point, this guy was robbed. The things that were stolen from him were weird. I mean, things like TV, etc., they were not taken. His car was taken and foodstuff from his house. It's strange. What kind of robber would do that? And this was a car he had just bought, maybe just a few months, 1 or 2 months prior. The most curious thing about it is right after that, within a week, he had another car. A much smaller car. He had another car. I had a conversation with him. I'm not going to go into that detail. I'm trying to keep this as vague as possible. And then, shortly after, this guy just blew up. He bought land. Listen, I can only speculate. I don't think I'm wrong, but I can only speculate. He bought land in places where I had planned to buy land, but I just couldn't afford it. This was GRA Ilorin. The smallest parcel of land in that place was in the millions. I was buying land, but I was buying land wisely in faraway areas, cheap. This guy bought land in the middle of the most expensive areas in Ilorin. Good for him. Shortly after, he built a house. I'm telling you, a house, like he built a stunning, beautiful house. I visited him. It was a nice place. I think that's the one time I've been there, though. I can't remember because I'm no longer living in Ilorin. I'm going into too much detail and I don't want to do that. So, but what is most curious about it is, first of all, you get robbed. Within a week, you've gotten another car. Within a couple of months, you're buying land. Within a year, you've completely built a house. And I remember that this fellow came to me at one point and said he got a contract from the state government which was worth a certain amount. Let me use precise numbers here. Said the contract was worth only about 3 million, but that he was working with some guys and they were going to get about 50 million out of the state house. That's as specific as I'm going to get with this. Long story short, I'm not going to get too much detail. I'm just going to say that I refused to partake in it. I didn't like the idea. I don't like the way it sounded. It just sounded not good enough for me. So I said no. Well, I think the guy is, I haven't heard from him for years. I think the guy is very successful right now. Good for him. I'm not going into more detail than that. What I think is that the robbery that he experienced was an initiation, not entirely dissimilar from the calls that I got, which I refused to partake in. And because maybe he allowed it to happen, whatever, because he went through it, they opened the doors for him to access what he did. I may be wrong, but that's what I think. But I connect this to Jesus' third temptation, where the enemy took him to the top of a mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of, I don't know if it was at the top of the mountain. And the devil, taking him up into an high mountain, showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time. And the devil said unto him, all this power will I give thee, and the glory of them, for that is delivered unto me. And to whomever I will, I give it. If thou therefore wilt worship me, all shall be thine. And Jesus answered and said unto him, before I even get into what Jesus answered, all the kingdoms of the world had been given to him, and he could give it to whomever he wanted. All the person needed to do was to cooperate with him, bow down and worship him. I got a call and I refused it. My suspicion, and if I'm wrong, I stand to be corrected. Holy Spirit, correct me. Anybody who knows better, you can critique me. I think this man is not young anymore. He got a similar call to what I got, cooperated with them. It makes sense. Let me just leave it there. And somehow or the other, he became very successful after. He certainly made choices that I didn't make. I'm not even talking the diabolical kind. I'm talking about business-wise. He did things that I didn't want to do, which doesn't necessarily mean he was hard. He's very hardworking. So maybe that's what it was. Whatever. From my perspective, though, the lesson I'm bringing out, 2 lessons. Number 1, some sufferings come from God. Some sufferings are things that you do to yourself. Some of these things were choices that I made, which made things very rough for me. Some other things were things that God orchestrated that were going to happen to me. But the third lesson, which will bring me to the answer that Jesus gave to Satan, was that the enemy makes you an offer. That as you are coming up in life, knowing that you are going to be great, you get a visitation, you get a call. It is not uncommon in the world around us. People like big names, some of the wealthiest people in the world, they get an offer, they get a visitation. Hello, you are becoming this person, but we are not going to let you pass. You shall not pass.
You shall not pass!
We're not going to let you become that person until you sign up with us, until you join us, until you become one of us. If you acquiesce, if you agree, they open the doors for you and you can access it. You become wealthy, you become comfortable, There are levels to it. I guess it depends on how deep you are ready to go. But if you refuse to, they start blocking your way. Now, here it is. There's only a limit to how much the enemy can block your way. When God determines that it is time, God will open the door for you and nobody can shut it.